College for hosting the Lunch and Learn series, which I really think is a truly empowering experience for the community. This lunch hour, I'll be presenting to you about my passion for grow biointensive sustainable mini farming and how we can use it to grow our own food, build community, and address climate change. I wanted to make a quick disclaimer about the presentation. I will talk a lot about conventional farming and how it's destroying soil, contributes to climate change. I want to be very clear that I'm not talking about our local Bermuda farmers who work very hard to grow fresh local produce for us every day. Instead, I want this presentation to celebrate them and uplift them and show how important they are to our community. To first understand the connection between agriculture and climate change, we must first think about the carbon cycle. As we all know, plants take in sunlight and carbon dioxide, and through the process of photosynthesis, they separate the carbon from the oxygen. We get to enjoy the oxygen. The carbon they turn into sugars, which are then turned into more stable compounds, making up the plant body. When the leaves fall or when the plant dies, soil microbes in the soil digest this plant body and recycle the carbon into what's known as humus or soil organic matter. With mechanized turning of soil, this humus is destroyed and carbon is released out into the atmosphere. Another way that agriculture contributes to CO2 emissions is through the clearing and burning of trees to make way for new farmland. Livestock farming in particular is responsible for nitrous oxide and methane in our atmosphere. These are two very dangerous greenhouse gases, nitrous oxide having 26 times the warming capacity of carbon dioxide and methane having 296 times the warming capacity of carbon dioxide. With these facts and with our desire to protect the environment, then we naturally can see that we need to gravitate more towards a plant-based diet. To drive this point home even further, 26% of all ice-free land, 26% of all land globally is used for grazing animals, while 33% of all cropland is used for livestock feed production. Well, geez, Chris, what a bummer. What can we do about such a big problem? Well, we are the answer, the human element. The human element is what's missing in farming today. To address climate change, to combat climate change, it's not simply about convincing farmers to change the methods that they use to grow food. Instead, it's about all of us taking responsibility for our food security and begin growing our own food sustainably. We need to microscale farming down from big, unsustainable farms to small-scale backyard farms using sustainable methods in order for us to grow enough food for a growing global population while protecting the environment and its resources. One of these methods that you can use to grow your own food sustainably is grow biointensive sustainable mini farming. It has the capacity, it uses far less resources than conventional farming while growing 2 to 6 times the yield on half the land needed and can grow soil 60 times faster than in nature, and all this in only 20 minutes a day. So what we're talking about here is a culture shift. We think about the ability for us to be food self-sufficient here in Bermuda. We all need to quit our jobs and go work out in the hot sun all day on the farm. With stable methods such as grow biointensive, it's able for us to have food self-sufficiency here in Bermuda and also continue on with our everyday lives, whether it's going to work or doing something that's truly meaningful. However, grow biointensive is not a silver bullet. Grow biointensive is not a silver bullet. There's lots of other methods, such as no-till, arid or low rainfall farming, agroforestry, and indigenous farming. All these hold lots of keys on how we can grow enough food for the planet while protecting the environment. I will now outline the 8 components that make up grow biointensive and how each of these can be used to reduce climate change. The first principle is deep soil preparation. Cross-section on the left is of a conventional farm, and on the right is a grow biointensive double dug bed. On the left, you can see the soil is usually loosened down 6 to 8 inches, where the grow biointensive bed is loosened down 24 inches. This principle reduces climate change in 3 ways. If we think about the energy that's used to cultivate both of these gardens, on the left, in conventional agriculture, we're usually using mechanization, such as a tractor, to cultivate the garden. The tractor is using fossil fuels, which we know contributes to climate change. On the right is grow biointensive bed. The double digging is done by human power, which uses carbohydrates as its fuel, which is renewable energy. so you're able to cultivate the garden without the harmful carbon emissions. Secondly, the double digging, we're doing once a year, and as your soil improves, less double digging is needed. Therefore, the important humus that's storing carbon is not disturbed in the soil, therefore less carbon into the atmosphere. Thirdly, because of the double digging, plants' roots can grow down deeper into the subsoil, getting nutrients and water from the subsoil. This allows us to space the plants closer together. This means we need less land to grow our diet, to grow our food. Therefore, there's more land available. With that land, it can be reforested, rewilded, so that we can grow trees, for instance, that can sequester even more carbon out of the atmosphere, reducing climate change. The second principle is composting. This is the major element in Grow Biointensive and how we use nature's carbon cycle to recycle carbon back into the soil and sequester large amounts of carbon. Often in Bermuda, when I talk to people about their experiences with compost, it's usually a frustrating experience. They usually tell me that it's smelly or that it doesn't work. And I can tell you this, what we have in our gardens, often when we're trying to make compost, is kitchen waste, what you see in the middle, and we have weeds out of the garden. These two are considered immature material or green material. What's actually missing from the recipe is the stuff down here in the right. Rich carbonaceous material, just like these dried corn stalks. These are essential for growing healthy compost for the garden. So what do we do if we're not already growing these these carbon crops? We can look around our garden. In the garden that we're at right now, where we live, I use a lot of times Chinese fan palm. I cut the softer ends of the frond off and we tear it up a little bit and we use that as a carbonaceous material in the pile. You can use avocado leaves or dried hedge trimmings as well while you're growing your carbon crops for the next compost pile. That way we can get the process going. Third principle of Grow Biointensive Sustainable Mini Farming is close plant spacing. There's the same amount of lettuce in both garden patches. The top is using hexagonal close plant spacing, which allows us to space the plants closer together. Again, this spacing closer together actually creates a canopy which protects the precious soil beneath. Also with this, we're using a bed culture. So in the top garden, imagine you can work and take out weeds in that top garden without actually stepping on top of the soil. Where if we're using row culture, we're needed to walk in between the rows on top of the plant's roots, compacting the soil, which is not ideal for getting nice, healthy plants. Also related to the double digging in the first principle, because of close plant spacing, we put the plants closer together, less land we need for growing our own food, more land to be given back to nature to grow healthy, thriving ecosystems. Fourth principle of Grow Biointensive is companion planting. All plants either have a positive, neutral, or negative effect on each other. Understanding these relationships can help you to grow a healthy ecosystem in your garden. Just like this basil, sending loving vibrations to the tomato plant, it can actually be planted, you plant the basil next to the tomato, it can improve the health and the flavor of the tomatoes. But what I really wanted to concentrate on in terms of companion planting in Bermuda is companion planting over time and talking about cover crops. Cover crops are plants that we will plant in the garden in between main season crops. What we have in Bermuda a lot, in the summertime when it's real hot and the rain stopped, we say, hey, it's way too difficult for me to be out there growing food. We have parts of the garden that are bare and exposed to the elements. It's very damaging for soil fertility. The sun's rays heat up the soil and can burn off the precious carbon that we know is stored in the soil. And also when it rains and there's no plants' roots in the soil, then important nutrients are leached out of the soil. So here on the slide today, I've put two examples for us to use in Bermuda. On the left, we have sorghum and cowpea, which we can use in the summertime. And a winter cover crop mix we can use in the winter is annual rye and vetch. The sorghum and the rye are grasses, so they have substantial root systems which hold the soil together. Cowpea, which is actually a cover crop that's used here in Bermuda already by farmers, and the vetch are nitrogen fixing plants. So they're very special. They lock nitrogen in their roots. And if you harvest these cowpea and the vetch before they go to seed, harvest the plant at ground level, the roots, they stay in the soil and they will release nitrogen into the soil. And this will reduce the amount of nitrogen needed to grow the main season crop that would follow while protecting the soil. Connected with compost's ability to sequester lots of carbon for us to grow soil 60 times faster than nature is carbon efficient crops. As we all know, plants use carbon in their plant body. Carbon efficient crops, they actually hold a lot more carbon than other plants in their large biomass. These two examples are from our garden. On the left is a grain amaranth that Jen pointed out before that we were growing in the garden, and on the right we have flint corn. As you can see, these nice, tall, thick plants, which means they have a lot of biomass, a lot of carbon, which equals soil growing power. The sixth principle of Grow Biointensive is calorie efficient crops. So this is crops that would allow us to grow a lot of calories in a small space. These 5 examples can be used in Bermuda, parsnip, sweet potato, garlic, leeks, and Irish potato. So again, just like the double digging and the close plant spacing, we're able to use these crops to grow a lot of calories in a small space, reducing the land that we need. More land can be rewilded and given back to nature, creating healthy ecosystems and trees for sequestering more carbon. And also in our garden, we look forward to be doing more research about other crops that are potential calorie efficient crops that can be used here in Bermuda. The 7th principle is open pollinated seeds. Hybrid seeds are widely used in commercial agriculture today. For me, I feel like that is directly connected to the depleted soils that we have, farmland that we have. So imagine if you're taking an open pollinated seed, the seed you would be saving traditionally generation after generation, you plant it in a soil that's depleted, you're going to get low yields. What farmers have to do now, because of the soil depletion, they're relying more on hybrid seeds, which have the capacity for high yields in the first generation. However, if we save the seed from these plants and we grow their offspring are not going to have the same high capacity for high yields or other characteristics that we might have picked out the parent for initially. This actually makes us and the farmers dependent on the seed company. So actually what we can start doing is start saving our own seed in the garden, growing the seed in our garden, and after generation, saving seeds. This is going to increase the plant's ability to adapt to our soils and climates here in Bermuda. Also, we are reducing again the land needed to grow our garden because we're not relying on another farmer's farmland to grow our seed. And the last component of Grow Biointensive is whole system approach. So this is the understanding that all these principles that I just outlined need to be used together equally in order to get high yields, increasing soil fertility, and all those good things that we saw before. What could happen is that some of you might go home and double dig your garden and plant broccoli and tomatoes without planting the carbon efficient crops that I talked about, because we know that those are very essential to returning the humus that's being burned off while we're growing the market vegetables. So that's a danger that could happen if you're only using 1 or 2 of the principles out of the system. Another challenge might be if you're going home right now and you try to start growing things Grow Biointensive, it might take a year or 2 before you start to see these results. This picture is from our garden in Spanish Point. This is after 3 years of using Grow Biointensive. We have high yields for many crops, and we can visibly see the soil fertility levels increasing. Bermuda already has a culture of small-scale farming, naturally because most of our fields are no more than 1 to 2 acres. On the left is a picture from 1919, 100 years ago. These 2 gentlemen are harvesting parsley. This is during the golden age of agriculture when we were actually exporting food to the United States. So let's take a second and imagine that right now. Just put our head around that. Right now we are importing over 80% of the food that we eat. So with Grow Biointensive and other sustainable methods, it's possible for us to flip that. If we all take, again, the responsibility for our food security and start growing our own food using these methods, we can flip that over. We could be actually growing 80% of our food locally here in Bermuda. Imagine that. On the top right is a picture of the Paget Community Garden, which I've visited many times. I enjoy visiting with everybody there. They're not only growing delicious vegetables, but they're also growing a vibrant, tightly knit community where experienced gardeners help out the beginners. On the bottom right, an example of commercial farming in Bermuda nowadays. That's me in the middle, working with Amaral Farms during potato harvest season. I'd like to end my presentation with this picture from last year's Environmental Youth Conference, which I had the pleasure of facilitating, and I got to lead a hands-on learning experience with these students. Their eagerness to learn about food and to work in the garden was a true inspiration to me. So who here is ready to go home and start growing their own food now? Let's see some hands. Yes, that's good, that's good, that's good. So I can invite you to check out the Grow BIOINTENSIVE website, which has lots and lots of resources you can use. On there are self-teaching videos, which are very accessible, even if you don't have a lot of experience in the garden. Also, we are actively working to set up a Grow BIOINTENSIVE training center here in Bermuda. We want to use this to empower the community, to educate individuals on giving them the tools and skill set needed to grow their own food sustainably. And on that note, I'd also like to let you know that we are still looking for land. We're looking for about ½ an acre to an acre of land to set up our demonstration training center, which is going to be really good for Bermuda. And during this process of talking to landowners over the last few weeks or even months, it's been really impactful for me. I mean, it has been challenging at times, but really good because we've been able to connect with a lot of landowners. And these landowners, they want to see this in Bermuda. They want to connect with other small-scale farmers to create a system that we could be growing our food sustainably in Bermuda. So if you have land, if you don't have land, if you are already an experienced gardener, or if you're just starting out, then come to the front and we can take your email address and create a connected community of sustainable gardeners for a healthy Bermuda and a better planet. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Chris. That was obviously really important and informative, and we appreciate your time. And hopefully